This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Postcards from the Edge. I'm your host, Amy Nelson, and I just wanted to take a moment and talk to you real quick and thank all of the Trek family and friends who have reached out to me. There was a mass shooting in Las Vegas, and that is where I reside. And as of recording, there were 53 dead and over 500 wounded. And I just am I'm so honored and touched that so many people reached out to me and was checking on me to make sure that I was okay and that I was safe. And I really wanted to thank you, listeners, and my family at Trek FM for reaching out and touching base with me. So thank you so much. It's nice to be part of a wonderful community that definitely cares about you. So with that, we can talk some Star Trek, which will help with situations going on in the world to give us a little escape and to help us realize how we can be better and hopeful, as Gene Roddenberry would like us to be. Now, I have with me today Bruce Gibson from Literary Checks and live from The Edge. Bruce, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Usually I come back with some kind of funny line, but I don't feel like I should right now.
Well, we'll get there. Things will lighten up for sure. But Bruce, you are one of the hosts from one of our new shows, our sub-shows, Live from the Edge. So why don't you tell us real quick about that in case listeners haven't had a chance to listen to your first episode that dropped last week.
Absolutely. So Live with Kelly and Ryan. That's a different show. Live from the Edge. This is our show here as part of the Edge podcast of Trek FM, where Brandy Jackala and I talk about the latest episode of Discovery. And it gets all confusing. The Edge and Discovery. Sometimes I call Discovery the Edge.
So what makes your show different than the rest of the 20 other shows we have going on, it seems?
Well, because we are live, just like Saturday Night Live. We're live in the fact that we do it on Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And we're live on YouTube, and we usually send out the link about 10, 15 minutes before the show. And then you can hear our reactions to the latest episode of Discovery. And we just kind of geek out and talk about our feelings about the show live and interact with everyone who's tweeting to us or in the live YouTube chat, because the video, you get to see us too. That's exciting. You actually get to see us and you get to go into the chat and we can read what everybody's saying. We can comment on it. So it's a very interactive show, unlike a audio podcast like we have everywhere else on Trek FM, which is pre-recorded. This one's actually live. And if you don't catch the live show, you get to hear it on the Edge feed the next day.
Well, I think Trek FM did right by putting the most beautiful people on the live show, because people are seeing you and Brandy right there.
Well,
and it's
you
awesome.
should be on too if it's all beautiful people.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, now we're getting the show started off just right.
Well, we are here on Postcards from the Edge to talk about episode 3 of Discovery. And as usual, I asked the listeners on the Babel Conference, and we want to share what they had to say about the episode. Now, if you'd like to participate in future conversations, please join the Babel Conference on Facebook. Search Babel and click the join button, and we'll let you right in. Within the group, you can search Postcards and see the most recent posts for this show. I usually make the post on Sunday and then collect everyone's responses by Monday evening so that we can record this. So Bruce, we had, it was, I think, over 70 responses, and so excited to see all the conversations. There was great amount of conversations going on. Before we do that though, did you want to share your comments, or are you going to wait for the live show?
Well, actually, by the time everybody hears this, I think the live show. So we're doing this kind of in reverse, but I will quickly just say that I was surprised. Well, I don't know if I should say surprised. I don't know what I was expecting from episode 3, except that I think I liked it better than the first 2 episodes. I really liked the first 2 episodes, but this third episode actually, I don't know, the pacing, the editing, I guess maybe because we're kind of settling into the crew and Discovery. So it felt like a regular episode, where the first 2 felt more theatrical to me.
Yeah. So listeners, will hold my response because I will be on the Edge that will drop on Friday. So you will have to wait another day to hear my response.
Oh, that means everybody has to listen to your show. What a great tease.
That's exactly right. So let's go into what you fans had to say about Discovery. So some of the just real quick responses. Brandon Cowell said, enjoyed it, especially the little bit of comedy it had. I was like, yeah, I chuckled a few times.
Well, I have to tell you, the very first response is actually one of my favorites. It's from Joe Saltzman, and he says, we finally get to see the Discovery. Yay!
Yes, finally, the ship named for the show that's named after the ship. Yes. And Dennis Belanger said, I have a very bad feeling about Lorca. He's obsessed. I see some Ahab in him, even if the Klingons have not wounded him personally.
Well, I also want to mention Floyd Dorsey says, as much as I like the zombie Vulcan episode of Enterprise, I think I like the scary boarding better. It did remind me of that Enterprise episode. I was definitely there thinking about that as they were on the USS Glenn, and it's dark, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's this spooky haunted ship or something's going on.
Yeah, that definitely was a little spooky. Rebecca Skipper says, I'm not going to give away any spoilers. Just so you know, listeners, you are free to give spoilers in our postcard thread. So please feel free to do that. And she continues and says, I'm not sure what to make of Captain Lorca. Again, there's this question mark about what's going on with Lorca.
There's a lot of comments like that about Lorca.
Yes. Art Shea says, outstanding. I really enjoyed this episode. Jason Isaac was creepy in a good way. For me, good serialized television shows leave you wanting more. Discovery is certainly leaving me wanting more. I would binge watch this if I could. Yes, I need more. This is killing me going week to week.
It's not killing me because it's given me the opportunity to watch it multiple times and really get into it, and to try to catch up into all these podcasts.
Yes, and become so much more knowledgeable after listening to everyone. Suzanne Williamson says, I can't wait to start working on my Cadet Tilly cosplay. I know I can easily pull off the quirky, almost annoying personality. All right, Suzanne, we are going to be waiting to see when that cosplay gets put together.
I love Tilly. She definitely is one of my favorites from that episode because she was actually the most fun. Like, everybody seems so ticked off about something and real serious. And then she comes in. She's like, oh, hi, how are you? And she's just all sweet and everything. Speaking of sweet, this is a bad transition, but Bill Sweet has a post.
Oh, boy.
He says, wait, what if Lorca is planning to weaponize tribbles?
I sort of thought that as well. Interesting.
It reminds me of Into Darkness and Kirk just saying, Bones, what are you doing with that tribble?
Mm-hmm. Matthew Baker says, I loved Alice in Wonderland and TAS references. Very creepy, and Tilly makes me happy.
Another Tilly happy comment.
Yes. And as of Monday, Christopher Baca is like, I'm watching the episode for a second time. And then Matthew Baker's like, catch up, Chris, you're falling behind. So I'm sort of wondering how many times have people watched it within 24 hours? That's going to be interesting.
What about you?
Well, I've watched it. Okay, so once, and then when I was prepping for the show, my brother had it on, so I heard it in the background, so it refreshed my memory. So does that count as twice?
Kind of, I guess. Like a soft 2.
Yes, a soft 2. Agreed.
I watched it and then immediately watched it again.
Oh, I really wanted to, but I had to call and talk to a friend about it. And so I knew I needed to get to bed, so I waited.
Well, so my wife had to go pick up my daughter, so she missed most of it. So as soon as she came in, she saw like the last 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, let's watch it from the beginning again.
Yeah, Luke Sims Jenkins says, best one yet, and the wife and I don't trust Lorca for a second.
Okay, so as the literary Treks guy, I have to mention some posts that I really like in here. So Davey Elmer says that Discovery is officially the canonical equivalent to the novel series Star Trek Vanguard and the 23rd century version of Deep Space Nine if Deep Space Nine were set aboard a ship rather than a space station. Vanguard. So that was a book series that came out a few years ago. I think there's, I'm trying to remember, 8 books and then a 9th, something like that. So yeah, Vanguard was on a space station during the time of the original series. And I agree, when I was watching this, it kind of had that same feel as Vanguard. Vanguard was a little darker, a little more mysterious, similar to Discovery. And Floyd Dorsey says, yes, I was definitely getting a Vanguard vibe from the mysterious nature of Discovery's mission. So it's interesting that other people picking up on Vanguard. So that really pleases me as the literary Treks guy.
Yes, I'm sure. Justin Ozer says, on my first viewing yesterday, I was a bit distracted and I missed some things and felt disappointed at the end. However, rewatching it today in a focused way, I like it a lot more. I do like the first 2 episodes more, though, and miss the Shenzhou and its crew, but I'm intrigued to see where the show is going.
So, Amy, we're not going to read through all, 700 of these, right?
Right. No, we aren't.
So I don't want anybody to be disappointed if you don't hear it. We're just kind of randomly picking and choosing here.
Yes, we are. And I do apologize. There's just so much and the show is only so long. There was some really good discussions. One of them was, okay, so can we talk about the spores? Because I found that very interesting. And that whole, the whole physics and biology coming together. And Christopher Baca says, when they mentioned this alternative spore drive, I got the Equinox vibe. And there were quite a few people that joined in on this conversation. And sort of talk, like Wes Huntington asked if the spores are sentient or intelligent. I thought that was interesting. And then Joey Slawinski says maybe the spores are what is inhabiting the body of the creature, maybe creating a sentient life form. You know that creature at the end that they capture from the Glen, right?
Kitty.
Yes. And so I just thought that was pretty interesting about the spores, and I didn't even think about it being a sentient life form.
I mean, I think originally I thought maybe it was, and then I forgot about that and just thought it was just spores. But, it's that scene at the end when that's all explained is definitely something I felt like I had to watch a second time to really understand, okay, what are we talking about here? Am I hearing what I think I'm hearing about the universe and its veins of spores or whatever?
Right. And Dan McWilliams says, they're either physics or biology. I need to watch that scene again. My first thought was the Iconians in their travel portals.
Ooh, I like that.
Ooh.
So Dan Wright says, I'm interested to see where they go with the story and if we'll keep watching. However, we also have a problem with Dark Trek. DS9 is my favorite. I'm disappointed that they decided to make it quite so gruesome. Definitely not a family show, in my opinion, which is a shame. I thought that was an interesting comment because Trek has always been, for the most part, very family friendly. And going into CBS All Access, there was concern, especially hearing TV MA ratings here in the States, for example, and TV 14 or whatever rating system you may have where you live, that's a little more adult. And definitely this episode I could see is not the type of episode my kids, when they were younger, I would want them to watch. I think they get a little scared. Now they're teenage girls, they could handle it, but it definitely pulls away from maybe family friendly. I mean, and family friendly, I think little kids, maybe not, but I think for the family, if your kids are older, it's safe. Yeah, and Chris Baca says, wonder what caused the bodies to be all distorted. And Floyd Dorsey says, I assume they were flashing around the galaxy using the spores and lost control of the teleportation. Seeing those bodies reminded me of the tale of the Klingons being anatomically inverted when trying to escape the Delphic expanse.
So sort of in line with the spooky, weird things, Stephen DeFroy says, what is the Gorn skeleton doing in Lorca's science room? I mean, there was some stuff there that was pretty creepy.
So that, I remember reading that comment. I did not catch that, the Gorn skeleton. I think I remember the skeleton, but I didn't put two and two together that was Gorn. So now I have to go back and watch it a third time as if I wasn't going to do that anyway. But I'm definitely going to look.
So Christopher Baca and Mark Rodriguez and Rick Collins, they had this conversation going on and says the Gorn were in the Vanguard books as well.
Yes, they were.
So, yeah. Tim Hand says, too much fan service throwing in little trinkets like Gorn or Tribble nods. Got no problem paying tribute to past Trek.
Yeah, I love the nods, but then you also, it's like, what's that line? Like, when is it too far or not enough? I mean, it's just, there's so many things like that. I mean, there were several throwbacks. For example, Brian Yates says he enjoyed the episode, and he liked that the transporter room of the Shinju and the old technology being phased out. He liked that whole thing, how things are evolving, I guess. And he says the cadet mentions that Michael is an unusual name for a woman. I've been told in the prequel book they address the uniform difference between Discovery and the original series. That is correct. That is addressed in there. It's very minor. It's very brief, but the book does address that. And Cadet Tilly mentioning about Michael being an unusual name, I was a little disappointed with that. Because I kept thinking that with her name being Michael, it was probably at this point in the future not uncommon for a woman to have a more male name, and maybe there were several Michaels that were women around. So I was disappointed that it's still considered to be unusual then, because I was hoping it was just more of the standard. Oh yeah, there's a lot of women named Michael in the 23rd century.
Yeah, I thought when I saw it for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, they're addressing what so many fans have been like, what's the main character? She's a female named Michael. And I thought, well, they're addressing it right here and now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I liked Paul Carrion's comment. It says, this episode reminded me of RPG. I'm assuming that's a role play game.
Yes.
You start off with a strong, badass character with all the abilities and Top Gear unlocked. Then boom, tragedy happens and your character is down to level 1. Over the course of the game, you see your character and therefore yourself grow back into a strong, badass character. Michael Burnham is our avatar. Through and with her, we get to grow in the Star Trek universe from the bottom all the way back up to the top. After all, sometimes down is up and up is down. Paul, that is a great comment.
It is. It's definitely one that I had highlighted in my notes. So I'm glad you brought that up because it is very similar to that. It's like you're going with this character on a certain up and all of a sudden, boom, we're down and we have to slowly crawl our way back up. We have to earn the points with this character.
There you go. Yes.
So Eddie Hagler says, my wife remarked about that this show is a lot darker. He says, I have to agree. For the first time, we are getting a very un-Starfleet-like crew. And that started to bother me a little. Just a little side note. Just a little. I was like, I don't know. He says, Michael is a mutineer, too incompetent to get the job done. Saru is such a coward. I can only imagine he will be useless in a fight. And Lorca is a scary captain that cannot be trusted and seems to be working outside of the Federation control, maybe even for Section 31. There are several comments of people pointing Lorca to Section 31.
So Rebecca Skipper says, I'm not sure what to make of Lorca. I'm not sure he is the villain, but maybe he has some connection with Section 31. He isn't my preferred captain, though. Well, of course, it's still early, and I said, I still love Captain Picard. And then Mark Rodriguez, who must know me very well, says, you like the cerebral type with the heart of the poet and the voice of a Shakespearean actor. And of course, that was very true. I do love Picard. It was sort of funny to go through that. But Mark Rodriguez says that he might be named after a writer named Lorca, but I'm not sure. There was some mention that he might be Spanish or something named after that. That was going through the threads. Oh, and Christopher Baca says, in that thread, I wonder if there's more to the head of security than they are letting on right now. Is she a member of Starfleet Intelligence or Section 31? So there's a lot of talk about this Section 31 going on.
I think that's very interesting. I can see why they're thinking that, but I also find it fascinating because before the show premiered, there were some theories that maybe the ship was connected to Section 31 because the registry number is NCC 1031.
Yes, I noticed that this time, yeah.
Now, Brian Fuller apparently is a big fan of Halloween, and they numbered it for Halloween 1031. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it's both. So, are there any negative comments? Well, I shouldn't say negative. Are there comments where people just aren't sold exactly 100% on everything they've seen? And so here we have Nick Radko says, I really didn't like this episode. Good suspenseful TV, decent sci-fi, bad Trek. The Starfleet personnel didn't act like Starfleet personnel to me. The premise seems outlandish for Trek, not sci-fi. And I swear, if they splice some crazy space fungi genes into Lorca's desk Tribble to defeat the Klingon Empire, ugh.
That's funny, that last
that
comment.
Is funny. It's funny. We're certainly loving these Tribbles. I felt the same way about this crew as I did the first time I saw Deep Space Nine. Because when I first saw the premiere of Deep Space Nine, no one seemed to be happy. Everybody was complaining. So I was like, this doesn't feel like Star Trek. Everybody's complaining. And I felt like this is like everybody seems like they're, mad or just like not happy right now.
Well, going along with that theme, Matt Rushing says, honestly, not sure what to make of the show, and I'm not sure the writers do either. It feels like Stranger, Battlestar Trek, as if Stranger Things, Battlestar Galactica, and Star Trek had a baby. Okay, interesting. I don't feel the Trek much at this point. Is very dark, and it could be a Section 31 influence. It does feel like the darkest of DS9 and Vanguard. All the weird science seems to be there, out for continuity issues as well. Just not sure about it.
Well, Matt Rushing, let me tell you something. You will come around and you will love this. Just kidding. But once again, Section 31, Vanguard, Deep Space Nine, these themes keep coming up. But I do agree. I felt the Battlestar Galactica feel in this episode. I didn't really think about Stranger Things, but I can definitely see that. That totally makes sense. But I feel like that's what a lot of shows do is, and creatives always kind of borrow and are inspired by other things. So that I kind of expect that.
So Liam Kerrigan also has some questions. Okay, this isn't going to be a popular opinion, and I totally respect that many will disagree me. Not looking for a fight, just sharing my honest thoughts here. It is a safe place, so thank you for sharing, Liam. He continues and says, Star Trek Discovery is sadly going down exactly the path I feared it would. Cold, dark, depressing, and not a single likable character amongst the main cast. This week's main plot also felt more like Alien or Event Horizon than Star Trek. Star Trek is supposed to be about hope, exploration, and the best in humanity, not constant, unprofessional bickering amongst crewmen, dismembered corpses, and cheap jump scares. Not sure if I want to continue watching this much longer. One plus point, the ship exterior looks fantastic. Well, at least he left it on a high note.
Yeah. I mean, I get his point. I wouldn't want every episode Discovery to be this dark and like what we just saw. I'm hoping that, as we've seen with other Star Trek series, each episode is different from the rest in tone and style and the different storytelling. But again, we really need to like this crew, and I really hope we get to that point.
Yeah. There was a good discussion on there talking to, Liam about that. And so I would encourage you listeners to go and look through that thread if you're interested to see what was said.
Brian McVicker says, far too much about this episode I found annoying. One small item, and it's probably just me, is that all the ranks in Star Trek throughout its entire history mirror the ranks of the U.S. Navy. It's not that difficult for the writers to simply Google this. First officer is not a rank, it's a title. You can hold the rank of lieutenant commander or full commander and be a first officer, but you don't get promoted to first officer. You get promotion to an official rank. Does anyone on this series, other than the captains, actually have a rank? I heard none.
Well, that got a lot of replies. There were 35 replies to Mr. Brian. And I was asking someone who's in the know, my brother who's in the Navy, and you can be a captain but not have that rank. So it depends on like the size of the ship and stuff like that. So sort of same thing in this. Like it's not an official rank. It's more of a position. You're getting promoted. So like someone who's a first officer, they can be a commander, they can be a lieutenant commander and have that position of first officer. Or same with a captain, like they could be a commander and a captain, but not necessarily commander. Just depends on where you are. It's more of a position instead of a rank.
Well, and these characters do have ranks, and I'm familiar with them, but I don't know if I'm familiar with them because I've read about them, or I don't recall if the actual episode ever referred to any of their ranks. But yes, first officer and captain. I mean, like Data, he was in, I don't remember the episode name, but, he was a captain of a starship briefly, and they referred to him as Captain Data, but he was still lieutenant commander. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think the point is that Brian was saying that but in the episode, they specifically refer to first officer as a rank to be achieved. And, maybe that was just poor wording choice, but, definitely achieving a first officer position is something that you want to do if you want to work up through the ranks of that.
Well, it's the 23rd century, so maybe they do it a little different.
Maybe that's true.
That's in my head canon right now.
Matthew Baker says, I love how Sonequa Martin Green plays Burnham, always this close to being full Vulcan, but also not at all. I'm loving the complexity of the characters. I also love the constant underlying feeling of this isn't who we are from the Starfleet officers uncomfortable with war. And I found that to be very true, and especially coming from just watching episodes 1 and 2, where we're seeing Sonequa or Michael Burnham, dealing with her Vulcan and her emotions and her logic, and then, using her logic to get out of the, prison from.
Yeah, the cell.
Yeah, the cell. And then, we get to see her now in this episode, dealing with her emotions of being the hated one, the mutineer. And so I thought I'm very interested to see Michael Burnham's character arc, definitely.
Well, I like the comments that Nick Anastasio said. He said, I didn't think I could like episode 3 any more than I liked the pilot of Discovery. In fact, I liked the pilot so much I had an honest fear it might be all downhill from there. How can this get better? I thought. And then I watched episode 3, and I could not believe how good I thought it was. I was literally yelling at my TV the whole time. Happy yells. There's very little I didn't like about the plot, the pilot, and yet Context is for Kings manages to be more sophisticated in every way. It's better shot, better edited. The acting is more nuanced. The ship is gorgeous inside and out. Everything feels new, yet something I already know. And I mean, he goes on about, the action is tight, the intrigue is compelling, the humor is right on the marks. I mean, I felt that's why I think I like this episode better than the first 2 for that same reason. It just seemed to all connect just right. I loved episode 1s and 2, but there were some choices where I thought the editing was a little off, or the lines were a little clunky, or just little things here and there. But this one seemed to flow. It just felt right.
Yeah, there's definitely some comments off of Nick's. There's 13 others. If listeners, you want to go back through and read those. So I, just as a side note, a little tangent here, I love Beyond, but in my opinion, the only reason why I love Beyond is because of 2009. And so I'm having the same feeling that I love Context is for Kings, but only because I really enjoyed episodes 1 and 2. Because I don't think episode 3 would be as great if we hadn't seen episodes 1 and 2. That's just my take on it.
I agree with you. If this was the very first episode, I think it'd be a little much. Because it goes right into the action very, very quickly. And then, I don't think we'd really understand Burnham at this point. It'd be like, what the heck? I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So there was, I think, and we have Brandon Cowles. He posted a picture of the Klingon shushing. And is he shushing you? That was great. That made me chuckle completely. There were a lot of picture threads, picture posts this go around.
Yeah, Chris Bacca did one where he has the obelisk when Burnham was going through the spores of different planets. He posted that and mentioned about, we see, I think it's Starbase 11 from the Menagerie. We saw that. And he mentions the arena from Amok Time, which I think, I don't know. Again, I have to go back and watch it. I think that whole arena, it looked like Amok Time, but I thought they said it was on Romulus. I don't know. But again, that's why we go back and rewatch things.
So Norm Lau says, in my opinion, one of the most key elements about Star Trek Discovery isn't in the show itself. Rather, it is what is it challenging the fans of Star Trek fandom more so than ever before. Trekkies, Trekkers, Niners, Voyagers, all have been faced with a very important, very pivotal series that in many ways has become a crossroads in Star Trek fandom. Star Trek has become, for all intents and purposes, a series based of realistic intent, meaning that there is a very hard, edgy, gritty, and adrenalized treatment of what was once a universe that encompassed conflict, war, strife, and hardship, with a completely different lens that represented those challenges through the stalwart and unyielding optimism that the universe will self-heal and things will get better as long as we lock arms as sentient beings and cling onto all last bastions of hope. Discovery, I believe, still holds true for those ideals, but it has removed that lens and allows for far more unfiltered and truer reality of what our future may become, extrapolated from today's standards of where humanity at present will take us 200 years from now. However, I believe that Discovery will still weave in that unyielding optimism, but in its own way and in its own time. We have to be patient enough to see it and let it earn our trust and develop its vision and tell us the story it needs to tell. Very well said, Norm. Thank you for your comment.
You're reading that. I thought that is really well written, and why didn't I capture that? And I just realized because he just posted it a few minutes ago while we're recording.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is live. No. This is Postcards. I
get the shows confused.
Yes. Well, listeners, there's one last one that I wanted to read. So just a shout out to Jason Chapman. Love the episode. Love watching it on my big TV with Google Chromecast. I thought the episode dropped at 7:30 Central, but I started to watch it around 7:05 Central. So bonus for me. Love Postcards from the Edge too. Well, Jason, flattery will get you a mention for sure. So thank you so much for your comment. So, Bruce, that's just a smattering of what has been going on with the Babel Conference. So, what are your final thoughts? How do you think that the fans are receiving Discovery so far after these 3 episodes?
It's mostly positive. Honestly, the reaction is more positive than I expected. When I watched the first 2 episodes and then I saw this episode, there's times where I think, oh my gosh, I think fans are going to complain about this. I don't know if fans are going to like this. I mean, I like it, but I don't know. But for the most part, people seem to really like it. So I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm actually very happy to hear that people are really liking these episodes.
Yeah, I've got a couple students that check in with me every week and did you watch it, Miss Nelson? And yes, I did. And there's, and so I asked them, well, did you watch it? And one of them said no to me. And I was like, oh no, are you going to stop watching it? Oh no, I'm just going to watch it tonight. And so I hope that Discovery, and with the positive response that we're getting, that's going to bring in new Star Trek fans. That's my greatest hope, is we can just spread the Star Trek love all around to everyone and that they will get and fall in love with it. And I think Discovery's on the right path, and definitely seeing from the fan response, I think people, I'm not seeing such the intense, I don't know if I want to say hatred, but the intense skepticism that was coming out before it even started. And now people are like, well, I'm not sure about this. And I'm fine if you have questions, but I'm glad that people are giving it a chance.
Yeah. And, giving it a chance is sometimes hard for people who aren't really into Star Trek, and you just tell them, hey, why don't you check it out? They have to then pay CBS All Access to see it. It's not like, oh, I'll just, turn on the services I have now and just watch a few episodes. They have to commit to it. And thankfully, there's free previews. And so people can sign up to CBS All Access and watch it free for a little while. But that's my only concern of trying to gain in popularity, is people have to invest into it, even if they're not into Star Trek.
Right. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people talk to you about Discovery on the internet?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, we'll have Live from the Edge Monday evening, so join us on there. You can send us Twitter comments at #LiveTheEdge. And you can also find me on Twitter and tweet me directly at Admiral_Rex. And as mentioned earlier, I co-host Literary Treks here on Trek FM with Dan Gunther, and I talk about Star Wars on the Star Wars Report podcast. And you can go to StarWarsReport.com, where I'm on with Riley Blanton and Mark Hurleman. And of course, I'm always in the Babel Conference.
I want my own hashtag. I'm going to have to start that. That's pretty cool.
#I love Picard.
Yes. Oh, wait, wrong show. But you can find me on Earl Grey talking about Captain Picard and all things Next Generation. And of course, I'm co-hosting The Edge with Aaron Harvey, Brandon Shea Mutella, and Michael Schindler. And you can find me on Twitter, which I need to get more Twitter responses. And that's at Miss Amy Nelson. But again, on the Babel Conference, you can find me there. Well, be sure to check out our Discovery coverage throughout the week. Live from the Edge airs on Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern and will be released as a podcast on Tuesday mornings, as we mentioned. Our commentary will be available as Tracks from the Edge on Wednesday, and that's with Michael Schindler. We will discuss your feedback on Postcards from the Edge on Thursday, which is what we're doing right now. And of course, you can catch the full analysis on the Edge main show every Friday. To wrap up the week, join us for Notes from the Edge on Saturday for links between Discovery and the broader franchise. and just give it a plug that's given to us by our one and only Chris Jones from the network. And if you haven't listened to last week's Notes from the Edge, please do so. It is an excellent, excellent show, and Chris does a very fine job. Best on the network, in my opinion.
And I agree.
So we'd love to hear your thoughts on Discovery. The best place to do that is the Babel Conference, as I mentioned, and I will collect your feedback for postcards. You can find us on Twitter at TrekFM or send us email using the contact form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and choose the edge. That will come right to me, and I can read your comments on the show. So if you'd like to help us keep all of our shows going and even become an associate producer, visit patreon.com/trekfm for all the details. We'd like to thank our associate producers at this time, Norman Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, and Shoaib Mirza. Join us next week for another episode of Postcards from the Edge. Hailing frequencies open.